Laddie's Garage for episode 6 of the VZ-SS turbo build. Today we're going to bolt the Turbo 400 onto the LS motor. I'm going to take you through step by step what's involved. Now, these cars, these SS's in Australia, they never came out with the Turbo 400. They all come out with 4L60s or 4L65s, and they're automatic, but they are definitely not up to the task of anything turbocharged with the torque load. I've seen several of my friends and people try and build their 4L60s up to take the power, and they have all failed. I've never seen one survive. So, you know, it's not that difficult to put a Turbo 400 in one of these cars. It probably does cost a little bit more, but it really is worth it in the long run. They can handle a lot more abuse, especially if you get a nice built one. Now, I'll show you what I've got here. Here is the Turbo 400 transmission itself. Now, I've gotten this built by a place called Gear Talk down on the south side of Brisbane. I'll pop a quick business card in there so you can have a bit of a look if you ever want to contact anyone to build you a decent box. I have had a couple of mates get their boxes built there too, their transmissions, and they've all seemed to work out pretty fine and last a fairly long time, so I've gone with the same place, Gear Talk down the south side of Brisbane. Now, when I approached them down there, I told them what it was for. It was for the extremely heavy VZ-SS, and I told them how much power. I said the most it would make would be 800 at the wheels. I'll give it a little bit of headway. I don't actually think it will make that much, but I'd rather the box be a little bit stronger. So they've put together a package for me. It started with a case that's actually from the United States, out of one of their trucks. So it's a heavy duty case, which means the casting is probably a little bit thicker, which can handle a little bit more pressure inside of it, I'm guessing. Yeah, they did put a trans brake in it. That's the trans brake solenoid. It has got a reverse pattern valve body. So first gear would be where normally third is, and it works back to front. We'll get back more into that once we start driving it. Yeah, upgraded internals. I couldn't tell you exactly what's in there, but I know the valve body's reverse and it's got trans brake and it'll handle the power. So it's definitely something that you want when you go to put a 400 into your car. It's important to be honest with the builder on what you're going to do with it, so that he can build it so it lasts. If you go in there and tell him I'm only going to make 500 horsepower and I'm just going to street drive it, and then you go and make 700 horsepower and drag race it, it's not going to last. So be honest, tell him what you're going to do, tell him what car, how heavy, because that makes a big difference of how much load this thing's going to take. So with that out of the way, then another thing you're going to need will be torque converter or stall converter. Same thing again, I went to the converter shop there in Brisbane as well, well-renowned converter shop around Queensland, south side of Queensland here, and gave them my specs, cam specs, engine size, weight of the car, diff gears, everything. He wanted to know everything, and then he's built me a converter to suit. It is a 9-inch converter. Other than that, I don't know much about it, but I do know that it's actually been made with the nose on the converter there to suit an LS crank. We'll get more into that in a second. So, very good converter, good shop, and he also did say that if it doesn't work out perfect straight away, I need it loosened or tightened. It comes as part of the service. He'll actually adjust it for me one time, included in the price. So I thought that was a pretty good deal too. So, yeah, converter shop, get on them. There they go. Okay, moving away from the converter. You need a way to bolt it to the crank of the engine. Now I've gone with an Aeroflow style flywheel. I'm not going to professionally drag race this, so it's not SFI approved or anything like that, but definitely a heavy duty looking piece. It's got the LS crank bolt pattern on the back, and then the converter bolts out here, the right ring gear. And the guys at Advanced Motorsport down in Caboolture, actually a new shop that I've been going to see, Richard and Luke in there, that is top blokes. I've actually ended up buying a fair few parts through them that you're going to see in the future. So and then you got the flywheel sorted. Then obviously you got to bolt the flywheel to the crank, and I've just got the ARP flywheel bolts. And I'll give you a look at the part numbers just in case. Flywheel bolt ARP. There's your flex plate to suit LS conversion. So yeah, so it's just going to be a matter of putting these parts together on the LS engine. So what I'll do is I'll get the engine crane sorted on the engine and get it out, and we'll start looking at getting all this stuff bolted on. Okay, we've got the motor hanging off the engine crane. Just use a decent sized bit of chain off the factory lifting lugs. Pretty simple stuff. I've got some rags there so it doesn't scratch my fuel rails. And we'll just pick it up so it's completely airborne, and you can just pull the stand off of the brace on the back there. It's the easiest way to get it off. So I'm going to get this all off, unbolt these 4 bolts off the brace, get that off, and we'll get ready to put the flywheel on. We got the motor hanging in the air, and this LS was originally in front of a T56 manual, so I did have a pilot bearing or spigot bearing in here that I had to get out. Now you'll see plenty of videos on YouTube how to get these out, and some of the videos say, you know, you put bread or grease, pack it in there to push the bearing back out. On an LS, never do that, because if you actually have a look in the back of the crank, that's actually a little mini Welsh plug. So you go packing bread and that in there, you'll end up pushing that Welsh plug back up into the crank space and fill your bottom end full of bread. And you don't want that. Now I didn't have the proper puller to get it out, so I just used my Dremel grinder with the carbide bit and just ground away until the bearing let go and I could pull it out. And that's what's left over. You know, it looks pretty messy, but I just thought I'd share that. Don't ever pack stuff into the back of that crank, because you will push that Welsh plug, and yeah, that will just be a complete nightmare. So the next thing we're going to do is grab the flywheel and put it on here with the ARP bolts. But what we want to do is go through and just clean all these threads out with a bit of carby clean or a bit of brake clean. Maybe get an old bolt, go in and out, make sure all these threads are nice and clean, so that when we torque down the flywheel, you get a true torque reading. Alrighty, brought the flywheel over, or flex plate I should say. Put it on. You can't really get it wrong because it's printed in there which side faces the transmission. Slide it on, line up the bolt pattern, and then because I have the ARP bolts, I've grabbed the ARP lube and just put a little smear under where the head of the bolt's going to be turning on the flex plate, so that it reduces friction between that mating surface between the back of the bolt and the flex plate, give you a true torque reading. Now I'll also put a little smear just on each bolt as well, just to, I don't know, use it up I suppose. It's probably a bit overkill, but may as well use it while we're there. And now I'll finger tight all these bolts in, and we'll have to put this engine down onto the ground so I can get a decent push on it with the torque wrench. Alrighty, I've just put the engine down on a sheet of ply so I've got a nice firm surface to torque these flywheel bolts up with. I've got the worn brown torque wrench ready to go. Now we have to go to 85 foot-pounds on these, so we'll do 2 passes. The first pass will be about 42, I've got it set to. Now they're a 12-point bolt, being ARP, so I use the 12-point socket, 1/2-inch drive. And then obviously the motor's going to want to turn itself over, so I grab the breaker bar on the harmonic balancer bolt, which is also ARP in this motor, so I've also got the 12-point nut ready for that, 27mm. And you can get away with doing this yourself. You can just put it on and then put it up against the ground, down on the ground, and then when you do the back it won't spin. But I'm lucky enough to have my mate Jamie here today to give us a hand. He's going to hold it, and I'll set you up on the tripod and we'll torque this up. Okay, we're ready to go. First pass, about 42 foot-pounds on the dial. And we want to go on a bit of a star pattern so that we evenly apply the load to the flex plate. So as long as you're not going right next to each other, just some sort of a star pattern will work. So let's get into it. Alright, Now I just have to increase the foot-pounds up to 85, which is the final pass, and we'll go through again and torque it up. Alright, it's all torqued up. I'm going to hook this engine back up and we'll look at mating it up to the 400. Okay, I might just take this opportunity just to talk about the nose of the converter and the back of the crank. Now in the back here, there's obviously a recess for the nose of the converter to sit in, so it sort of centralises itself. Now, my converter was specifically made with the correct nose. This is the nose, like a nose bushing style thing there. That's been correctly made to fit in an LS motor. So that converter's built for an LS. Now you can put just your average converter that say was behind maybe a Holden 308 with the turbo 400, or even just your old small block Chevy, and you can use that converter because these Aeroflow flywheels come with the little adapter bushing. Now this adapter bushing you would put in the back of the crank and it slides in and it takes up the space so that your old converter will still bolt in. Now obviously I don't need that, my converter sits in there beautifully, but always a good thing to remember that you open up that flywheel box and this is in there and you're using the old style converter, or not a custom converter. You will need to use this so that the converter can locate on the crank. So now I'm going to actually put the converter in the 400, ready to bolt these together. Okay, we're going to slide this converter on now. I just thought I'd show you actually closely what's involved. Now inside this converter, I should try and get a light down there so you can see. I don't know if you can see, there's one spline right in the bottom, real fine spline, then there's like a medium spline up from that, so there's two different sets of splines, and then there's also this dog engagement here as well, so there's 3 engagements. Now on the auto, same deal, 1 set of splines, 2 set of splines, and then in behind the seal, I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if I can get it for you. Oh yeah, you can just see it there. Oh yeah, see that tiny little notch there? It's just in about here when I shine a light on it. That's the 3rd engagement. So when you slide the converter on and start turning it, you want to really hear it or feel it slide in and engage all 3. Most importantly the last one, that's the one that some people miss sometimes. Now I sprayed all this with a bit of WD-40 just to lube it up just a little bit of WD-40 around the seal and some WD-40 in around the nose, just why not, just to make it slide in there a little bit better. So I'll set these up and on the tripod and I'll slide this converter on. Alright, slide her on. Sort of feel that first one engage, you spin it and push, second one engages. Hey Jamie, see if you can hold that for us. Third one. So that's fully engaged. Now we can bring that motor over and mate it up. Righto guys, I've brought the engine over on the engine crane, and I've got the auto on the milk crate ready to go. Now what we want to do is get these set up at a nice height so that these locator dowels on the block go into the big locator holes in the auto. You just set the right height so that when you tilt the gearbox up it just mates up. And we just use the standard belt housing bolts that were in the T56 or in the 4L60, they work fine. And I just put them through the wire wheel, clean all the threads up on them, have a couple of them handy ready to get this started. Alrighty, just bring it in a bit. And just start cut your bolt. Alrighty, that's made it up perfectly. Now you can see Turbo 400 onto LS that the top bell housing location on the block mates up to nothing, and then on the auto this one to the right also mates up to nothing, so there is no bolts. But don't stress out, done this a few times and there's still more than enough bolts to hold it. There's two on this side with the locator pin, and then on the left hand side you do get the top one and also another two, and that's still more than enough to hold the Turbo 400 onto the LS motor. Now what I'll do is I'll go through and throw these bolts in, and I don't actually use a torque setting here. There probably is a torque setting, but for the history of my existence I've never torqued them. I'll just make them really nice and tight, and I'll go through and do that, and then we'll look at bolting that converter up to the flex plate. Alright, all those bolts are done up, nice and tight, no specific tension. Now we're going to need to get under and do the converter bolts. To make that easy, we'll drop that starter motor out, and that gives us access in under there, and also go around and take all the plugs out so that we can turn the motor over to bring each converter bolt around easily without having to fight the compression. So I'll quickly fly through, plugs out, starter motor out, and get you set up ready for the converter. Okay, we're all set up here on the ground ready to go, and I'll just quickly show you that this is where the starter motor normally sits, so you get that out of the way so that you gain access to the flex plate and the converter. You can see the torque converter spinning around in there. Now what we want to do, the spark plugs are out, and I've got Jamie on the harmonic balancer bolt. He's going to rotate the engine around so they can bring the converter boss on the flex plate up around so I can put the bolts in. So if you want to spin that around, Jamie, and bring that bolt up here. Yeah, keep coming. A bit higher. A little bit more. A little bit more. Right about there. So the best spot is roughly just under where the starter flange is. It gives you the most access to that hole in there. You can see, I don't know if you can see it on that camera. Oh yeah, you can. And then you just grab your converter and bring one of the feet around to line up with that hole. And it's just a matter of grabbing one of your converter bolts. Now the converter shop hooked me up with the hardened high tensile super bolts, whatever they want to give you. I always worry about them backing out of the converter and chewing up the back of my block. So I throw some Loctite 263 Loctite on there, red, give it a nice bead, and then you can just finger tight them in there. Now this is the only position around the back of the motor where you can access these bolts. Everywhere else around here there's not enough room to get that bolt in. So just keep that in mind, that you have to rotate it to about this position to get it in. If you just wiggle everything around, you can get them in finger tight. Okay, all three of them are in finger tight. We'll just go through. I don't torque these up either, just try and do them up as tight as you can without stripping it. I know that seems like a pretty wild tension, but it works. It's pretty hard to get a torque wrench in here, and I don't have a torque spanner. Come to think of it, I don't even think they make a torque spanner. Anyway, just you got to hold that for us, Jamie. Go back down, and you got to push down on that crank brace to fight against me while I tied it.
That way.
Whatever way. Not that way.
Can we start again?
Nah, it's all good. Tighten it up. About that tight's good. Righto, rotate to the next one, mate. And it's not this hole. This flex plate has 6 holes and we're only using 3, so miss this one and go to the next one where the leg is. And you'll see the leg coming around off the converter. And there she is. Up a bit more. Yep. Oh, back down. Are you ready?
Hang on.
You good? Yeah, that's the go. Yep, fight against me. You got up? Another one. Yep. Alright, rotate for the last one. A little bit higher. A little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, yep. After we do this, I think we'll get to get that torch. Oh, beautiful. Okay, all those bolts are nicely done up. All the bell housing bolts done up. Next thing we're going to do is grab my loom, and we'll sort the loom out on there and get the wiring loom on there so that it's all ready to go to drop into the car. So I'll probably put this down on the ground on a bit of ply, and we'll get the wiring loom laid out ready to go. Okay guys, just got the motor in the box now, chilling on a piece of ply so we can lay out this loom and look at putting it back on. Now this is the original loom out of the SS, but originally it was auto 4L65E. So to make my life easier, I actually got this loom completely modified. Now I just scrolled through Facebook and found a few people sharing some links and that, and I come across this custom Ls Looms. His name's Tim, he's down in Narangba, and I really just cannot speak highly of him. Like, he's just done a fantastic job, and he worked in with me for what I wanted, completely redone this loom exactly how I need it, and at a very competitive price. I'll share like a bit of a business card off Facebook, or his Facebook page here. And I'll just take you through some of the things he did. Like, obviously it was a 4L65E automatic that was in the VZSS. Now it's going to be turbo 400, so the old 4L65s, or if you've got a 4L60, they're all fully electronic driven. Heaps of solenoids, electric solenoids, whereas the old turbo 400s, there's no electrics inside there. So normally down the bottom here there would be another big plug that goes into the side of the shifter selector on a 4L65, and a whole heap of wires that come up through the loom up into the plug for the ECU. Now he's gone through and stripped it all back and taken all the wires out that I don't need for that automatic, but at the same time he's put in the correct wires into the correct pins into the ECU to run an electronic speed sensor still. Now you can get, I had to get mine from the States, but you can actually get an electronic speed sensor to suit turbo 400. Now if you speak to your engine builder, your transmission builder while you're getting it built, he can put that in and put the reluctor wheel on the output shaft so that it makes your speedo working a lot easier. I've had mates before that just get that plugged off, and then they're trying to piggyback ABS sensors to get ABS sensors to make their speedo work. Spend the time, get organised and get yourself the correct reluctor wheel and sensor for a turbo 400, an electric style one, and it'll just make your life a breeze. Now, like I said, the loom has been custom to allow for that sensor. So with that, the wires come back up, and then to make that sensor actually work, it has to be pinned into the other plug on the ECU. So he's put a little piggyback wire out of this loom with the two correct pins ready to go to put into the other loom. I'll quickly show you, it's just over here. Now he's given me the information, but those two other pigtail wires will end up going into pins for this to make that work. So, you know, that's pretty convenient that he sorted that out for me. Now another thing he also sorted out for me was the neutral safety switch and the reverse lights for the shifter. Now wherever they go, I don't even know where they go, but all I know is he's pulled out of the loom that goes back inside the car. This is the plug that's inside the car. It piggybacked out of the side of that. A nice little extension of wires to head down to the B&M shifter, to those two little micro switches. Now if you haven't seen those micro switches or where they are, if you have a look at one of my previous videos, you'll see that the two little micro switches on the side of the shifter when I installed it. So that like makes life a lot easier too. So yep, Tim, custom Ls Looms. Now Ls Looms is LOOMZ, but anyway, like I showed you the business card. So yeah, give him a shout. Go and hit him up. I'm sure he could probably send you looms, or you could send them to him if you're not close by, and definitely competitive prices too. So I've got that laid out, ready to go on the engine, so you can see the injector plugs either side, so it'll just all go straight on, all the earth. And I actually lay that on now because once that engine's in there, the last thing I want to be doing is leaning over the back of the engine trying to put the earth straps on the back of the heads. So it's just a bit of organisation. Makes life a lot easier to do that now before you lower the engine in. So I'll get it draped over and I'll start bolting everything and plugging everything in. We'll have another look before we lower the engine in. Okay, the loom is on the engine, ready to go. I just thought I'd take you for a quick tour just to show you, maybe explain which each plug is. We'll start from the very end here. These are the new ones for the speed sensor wires to go into the other plug in the ECU. That's the plug that goes into the ECU. These are going to go down to the reverse light switch and neutral safety switch in the B&M shifter. This is the plug that's inside your quarter panel that hooks up to your PCM and BCM and all your dash and everything like that. This one here is like an alarm under the bonnet, I'm pretty sure, that one there. Could be wrong. Working my way up. This one here is your front oxygen sensor, front left oxygen sensor. This one down here is your knock sensor. Come up. Obviously your injector plugs, your coil plug. Then you work your way around and down. Water temp sensor. Then that one goes down to your alternator. That just switches your alternator on and off. This one here comes forward and that's hooks into the body loom, which then goes through to like your air temp sensor and your air conditioner pressure sensors and your dryer and your lines and all that sort of stuff. Sneaking down here, I don't know if you can see it real well, goes down the back there. Cam sensor there. And that's the left hand side. We'll go back, work our way back across. Oil pressure sensor. Come back across. Down under here, your other knock sensor. Then also your crank angle sensor or your crank position sensors in the back there. That comes off here too. Obviously fuel injectors again. This is the coil pack. I have the coil pack off because the chain rubs on the coil pack when I lift it up, so it's off. But that's coil pack. Work your way forward. That's actually your fuel tank purge solenoid, which I don't have on here. I am probably going to remount one, but probably not here. Catch can will sit here, so we'll look at that later. Then you're also looking at manifold pressure sensor, which is the standard location here, which I have plugged into the standard one. But this engine's also got, if you can see in there, it's got a 2.5 bar one into that side port there too. So that plug doesn't suit. In the future I'll have to get a loom from VCM or a plug to change that back over. But to start it up aspirated, which I'm going to do, that standard one will be fine. Obviously throttle body plug there, then we run down into your air compressor for your air conditioner compressor. Work our way back. Then you have your right hand front oxygen sensor, your right hand rear oxygen sensor, your left hand rear oxygen sensor, and then your speed sensor. Now I have left this back one unplugged because I like to drape this back over the top out of the way, because the transmission tunnel ends up rubbing on the top of the gearbox along here as it goes in. It doesn't rub hard, but I definitely don't want any wires or anything there to get caught up on it, so I like to keep that part of the loom out of the way. I also drape that loom on top of the engine as well. One thing I didn't mention before, is probably very important, is the little earth straps as well. So you got to make sure the earth straps go on. There's one there, and there's also one on the front of the head too here. So yeah, that's the engine loom, and there's another loom we should probably talk about too, and it's probably referred to the charge loom or the battery loom. Now you can easily put this one on after the engine's in, and I will, because I'm going to do a battery relocation to the boot, so this loom will actually change, but there is a possibility I might just put this on and just put the battery in the standard location just to get it started, so I don't have to do the battery relocation before starting it. But I'll leave it off for now because we never know. That's something I haven't really decided on yet, but just a quick look at that, just in case someone's putting their engine back in, they need to know. But these two wires go forward to the starter motor, then it wraps around the front. This one wraps around the front into the back of the alternator. This is a strap that goes off on one of the bolts that go to the block. This one here, little bracket that holds it. Then obviously your battery terminals, and you got this wire here is actually what tells the thing to crank. This goes down into the starter motor, but there's a plug on the right hand side of the car there for that to plug into. So just a bit of a quick look at that, just in case you need to know about that loom too. Alright, next thing I'm going to do is push the SS back, get it prepped to lower the motor in. Okay, we're prepped, ready to go, engine going in. Now you're probably looking at that swinging in the air there and thinking, wow, that is on an angle. But that is the key to dropping the engine and gearbox in as one, that angle. Now you can see I haven't got the car jacked up at all, it's just on the ground. Move back, it'll take me a bit to get it in the corner and get it started. I probably won't film me shimmying that around. But the only other thing I'll get ready is a bit of protection over the front and a jack in the back there, ready to go with a bit of timber to take the back of the pan. Now, probably can take the bonnet off, but I've always wondered if this is possible without, so we'll see how we go. I did take the other motor out with the bonnet still on, so we might be right. So yeah, let me shimmy this over. Oh, that's the other thing too, when I chain it up, I always just slide a couple of screwdrivers through so that chain doesn't want to walk through the hook. Just a little safer precaution. So yeah, she's up, she's ready. I'll bring it over and... Okay guys, you probably think this is pure insanity, but it's the easiest way. So I've just jacked it up. I can probably go a little bit higher. We'll get that gearbox in and just start walking it forward. Probably try not to talk too much so that it doesn't sound like I'm squeaking when I put it in time lapse. Alright guys, I'll give you a bit of a look and see where we're at. It definitely is possible with the bonnet on, but the sump was pretty much just rubbing on there, and I had some interference. That light stuff in the camera had some interference with this. I had that boom, had to just sneak through here. Probably just take the bonnet off next time, but at least I know it can be done. There you can see The pan's already over the cross member, the jack's down there ready. I am going to get down there and get that jack on the pan so I can start lifting the back of the motor up, back of the gearbox up, levelling the motor out. Now you can see I have the jack facing forward and back so that as you push in and down, the jack's naturally just going to want to roll with it, and you can slowly jack that jack up to bring the gearbox up as it goes in, and it just scoops it in. It's very easy. GM designed, you know, the VT to VZ so well, it makes it so easy to get these things in. Okay guys, different angle. You can see I've got that's the jack wheel there, and there's a little block there under the back of the transmission. You can see the jack just under there running parallel with the car. Now I did move the light underneath, and you can't see out of camera, but I'll just move it. Still enough room, so I'm going to go down and in. Slowly go down, slowly push in, slowly jack up. We'll click over to time lapse. Okay, she's well on the way in. You can see down in here the back of the sump clearing the steering rack. Once you're over there, you're home sweet home. You're really getting there. You can still see the jack under there, under the pan. I'm past the steering rack with the back of the sump now. Now you can get through the front here, and you can just have a look. I don't know if you can see it, but those bolts there, that's the bottom of the engine mount, both sides. You can see the other one. And the light's difficult for the camera, but you can also see just to the left of that bolt there's a hole in the K-frame, so we've just got to shimmy it back until we can drop those into those holes, both sides. Lower it down and the engine's sitting. Alright. I'll just give that a bit of a push and a drop and a bit of a tweak. It should be home. Alright, I've got it to the point where those engine mounts look like they're going to drop into the holes. I had to pump the back of the transmission up a little bit to get it level, to bring the engine mounts in line. It should be just a case of lowering it in and it should be home. And it's in. It's really not really that difficult. The way they've designed it with the straight up and down engine mounts makes it a lot easier. So the engine's sitting in there. What I actually have to do now is I have to be able to fit under the car so I can work on the rear gearbox mount. So I'm going to put a jack under the back and jack the back up so I can get under there. Okay guys, another quick look at the engine in there. Got all the chain and everything off. All the crane, everything's packed away, which is good. I moved the jack to the side so I could easily adjust the height of the transmission. And I've got it jacked up on jack stand so I can get underneath to the back of the gearbox. We're gonna get the gearbox mount sorted. Now this here is the factory cross member, gearbox cross member for the back. Now I'm just going to modify this to use this. You can buy custom made ones that in my opinion cost an awful lot of money for not a lot of value really. Now this here is also a mount for a Turbo 400 in a HQ. I'll have to get the part number for you if you need it. I have to find the packet in the bin, but just get them from Repco. They're relatively cheap, $40. Now I've been underneath there, I've bolted that onto the gearbox, I've bolted this onto the car and looked at the relationship and the heights and everything like that. And the bottom mounts are actually in the same line. They're not the same center, but they are in the same line. So they eventually will go down through there. And the only other problem is on the 4L65, the mount is a lot lower on the back of the gearbox. So if this was to just sit hard on there, I find that the gearbox is too low, so it needs to be packed up So I come up with 30mm, went up to the back shed, found some scrap, some 30x30. Oh, I don't know, it looks like 3mm wall. It's solid, it's never going to go anywhere, so I'm going to cut that down as a space between there, and the bolts will come up through the bottom and into the mount. So I don't think I'll bore you with the cutting of this down, so I'll cut all this up and drill some holes in it, and I'll come back so you can see the orientation of it. Okay, I cut that little bit of 30x30 down. I just held it up against the bottom of the mount, marked the centres, got the centre punch, punched it, pretty easy stuff. Put her over on the stepper drill on the drill press, drilled it out. Now I'm going to give it a bit of a paint with just some black kill rust paint. That will do, give that a quick dust up. And hopefully while that's drying off enough, I did mark out for the new holes in the standard cross member. Then I used the measurements from this, held it up, centered it up, marked it, straight line, center punch again, getting ready to drill it. Now you will notice that it doesn't sit in the middle of this cross member, and even the 4L65 one doesn't either. Now I put this under the car, and naturally where it all wants to sit is actually to one side, so I'm guessing that that's what GM designed it to do for some unknown reason. But I'm just going to stay with it. If they did it, I'll stay with it. It's only a little bit out of centre, probably 15mm probably out of centre, but it might have something to do with tail shaft sinking and all that sort of stuff. So off centre, marked it, so I'll drill these and then we'll sort of dummy assemble it. Okay, drilled the holes for the centre and ran into a problem. The hole is right on the middle of this middle rib. This is like easy 5 or 6mm thick. It's not going to matter that that rib is not there, so I'm just going to take a grinder, trim that out, machine it out with the grinder, just make some space for the bolt so that that bolt can clear. Okay, I'll just quickly show you outside here how I got rid of that rib, just in case some guys don't know. I just cut a series of cuts to make some thin slits, so then that way you can just grab it with the pliers or just hit it with the hammer and they'll just all snap off. Then just get the grinder in there on its edge and just take all the little bumps off. Pretty simple stuff. Just a quick look before I actually get under the car and install it. I've got the bolts in. You can see my painted up bit of 30x30 box section. You can see where I ground that rib out nice and tidy so that that bolt can go in. Still plenty of meat there. It's going to be heaps strong enough. I've just got it loose, so it makes it easy to put these other bolts up into the mounts. They're the ones that go up into the back of the auto, and then the ones into the body. So I'll crawl under there, get it all bolted up, and I'll take you under and have a look. Righto guys, now keeping it real, I'll have to admit that I have made a mistake. When I've initially put this cross member up to get the line up on the rear mount on the Turbo 400, on this side here you can see there's 3 options for the bolts. Now on this side there's only 2, but on this side I've actually put it in the back 2 holes, and then in the front here I've only just quickly thrown 1 bolt in and it landed in the rear hole and it lined up. Now I've gone to fit it in after I've just drilled them holes, and obviously the 4th hole I'm trying to get it to start, it's in the middle of no man's land, and I've just realised what I've done. So what I'll end up doing is I'll get out from under the car and I'll show you what I've done. I've actually moved the mount on this cross member, and we'll have to put a little bit more work into it to make it work. So I'll get up there and I'll show you what's going on. Okay, you can see the mount. They're those original holes that I had marked, I thought was going to line up, made the mistake, and then remarked it, and they're all the way back here. Now they are right on the edge of that pad there, which does worry me a little bit, but we just persevere and we can make something work. But also what I had to do is to get them bolts into there, there was another rib like this that went all the way across here. Now I got in there with my grinder and my Dremel grinder, cleaned all that rib out so that these 2 bolts could go in there without the heads fouling. So I had to grind that out to make it work, and I'll quickly assemble this and I'll show you what the next problem will be. Okay, I've bolted that mount on there and it's still super rock solid. And there's no probably real problem with the strength of it, but I don't really like how that back edge of that box sits off that lip a little bit. I'd much prefer that edge to be supported. So, you know, it's probably going to be strong enough, but what I'll probably do in future is get a bit of, say, 2 pieces of 30x30, say 3 or 4 mil thick wall box, put them next to each other, and then actually out of aluminium and actually TIG weld it to the base here. But I'm not really going to rush into that because I have been speaking to my tail shaft guy, and we are considering putting a single piece shaft in it. Now this has got a dual piece, 2-piece with the centre bearing at the moment, and we're just going to toy with the idea. We've been talking about it. We're looking at putting a single piece in, get rid of that centre bearing. Now nothing's set in stone yet, but there is the possibility with the single bearing that the gearbox might have to be raised or lowered for certain universal angles and to make all the synchronisation of the unis work and all this. We'll go through that in probably the next video, but I'm not going to finalise this cross member. This will do to get a length on the tail shaft and get things sorted and get it mounted so I can roll the car around and have no jacks underneath it. And then I might have to revisit and re-shim this to a different height, even maybe move the gearbox from side to side. We will have to see, but for now this will do. But in the future I think I'm going to replace these bottom bits with aluminium and actually weld them in, but this will do for now. I'll get this in the car and we'll have a look at the clearance around the auto and all that sort of stuff. Okay guys, under the car, and you can see it all bolted in. With that light set up as well, you can see that at that height the pan lines up with the bottom of the cross member, and it also lines up with the sump, so it's in a nice straight line. Heaps of room for the Turbo 400 in around the transmission tunnel. You can see the bottom of the shifter there for orientation, but yeah, it's definitely motor and gearbox all in. Righto guys, that'll do for this episode. I think there's probably enough content there for one video. You know, we went through, bolted the flex plate on, converter, put the gearbox on, showed you over the wiring loom, we lowered it in, and then I did get the gearbox mount to hold, but I'm not happy with it. That's not 100%, so I've made a bit of a mistake there, and we'll probably modify that more, because like I said, I've been in talks with the tail shaft bloke that I'm going to use. We're considering putting a single piece tail shaft in it, try and get rid of that centre bearing and try and make something a bit stronger. So it's not 100% yet, but there might be a bit of movement in that gearbox that we have to move around to get the unis to sync and everything like that. So we'll re-look at that cross member in the future, make it better, but it's holding the gearbox now. At least I can measure the tail shaft, I can roll the car around without jacks underneath it, and that's all good. So in the next episode coming up, I think we'll look at what we're going to go through with the tail shaft, installing the tail shaft. We'll do the transmission cooler too, because we need to be able to fill this transmission with oil now that the converter's all bolted up. If we're going to start it, you can't start with any oil in there, so we need seal it up, transmission cooler, dipstick, tail shaft. We'll work on that stuff down the bottom, and then obviously in the future we'll get it running aspirated. Then in the future, turbo kit, intercooler, fuel system. There's heaps to go. It's exciting times, that's for sure. You know, there's plenty of good content coming up from now on. I'm pretty excited about it, and it really, once you get to this stage, the drive to keep on working on it and keep on getting it going goes higher and higher, which is awesome. I love it. Can't wait to drive it, to be honest. It'll be a little bit until I can get that next video out. I am heading out to my old man's farm for his birthday bash, taking the dirt bikes out there, taking the kids, the misso, that we're all heading out there for a bit of a ride and a bit of a party. So this weekend I'm out, no work this weekend on the cars, but as soon as I can I'll be straight back in, swinging spanners, making videos and getting this thing going. So you might just have to wait a little bit. Now, if you like this sort of stuff, if you like this video, if you could hit that like button for me, that'd be good. If you want to see more of this build, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and it will tell you when my next video is out so you can get straight on there and watch it. One thing I did notice though, is after I upload a video, it's at like 480p quality for the first few hours. I don't watch videos in 480p, so I upload them in 720. If you wait a few hours, you'll actually be able to watch it in 720, which you just see the detail so much better. It's just a little hot tip. I'd much rather watch it in HD, but I think other than that, that's all I got to cover. So one thing I am doing right now is just getting if it'll focus, getting the PVC and just cutting a bit of PVC under there just to see if that single piece tail shaft will work, and I'm trying to get a measurement on it so that when I get back from the farm I can get straight into making use another video. So I'm going to get stuck into that, see if I can get a bit of a head start, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your week, enjoy your weekend, and I'll catch up with you soon. Thanks for watching.